Time for a wicked battle, time for the X18 versus the RetroGame 350. Which one will fit your need? Let's find out. Welcome to the Wicked Gamer and Collector. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. So in today's video we are going to do a side-by-side comparison with the RetroGame 350 against the Powkiddy X18. And the reason why, I got a little request for a fellow Wickedfamily member and I was thinking this is a very good idea. So let's talk about these and what are the differences. The price range, it's almost the same. The X80 is a little bit more expensive than the RetroGame 350, but I just wanted to do this side by side so you can see what portable system will fit your need. Alright, let's talk about a little bit of the pros and the cons about these systems, and I hope this video helped out. So grab yourself something to drink and enjoy the show. Alright, so let's do a side by side comparison if it comes to the screens. So the X80 Powkiddy has a 5-inch LCD screen. It's a beautiful screen, it's bigger than the RetroGame 350 that has a 3.5-inch screen. But the X18 has a 5-inch touchscreen because this is based on Android, or this device is based on Android. But if you only want to play retro games, then you're not going to need the touchscreen at all, so that is something that's a little bit overdone if you ask me. So let's take a close look at the RetroGame 350. If you look at this screen, it's smaller, but it is not, let's say, too small. It's very huge if you compare it with all the other previous Chinese portable systems. But this thing has an IPS screen and the colors are very beautiful and colorful. And it has a very, very sharp image. It's a 60 Hz screen. So if you look at the screen, it's more like, do you want to have a big screen with a touch function you're not going to use? Or if you want to have this smaller portable system. So that's again something you need to consider for yourself. But let's talk about the casing and what are we going to get. So if you look at the casing itself, this is more like a Nintendo DS. You can flip it open and you can play your games. If you look at the build quality, it's a little bit, I would say flimsy, but if you look at the build quality here, I don't know how many times you can do this, of course. So that's something you need to consider. And the back buttons are feeling very cheap. These are a little bit clicky, but these feel very cheap. So I'm not a big fan of the shoulder buttons. The D-pad is not the best D-pad I have seen. The A, B and X and Y buttons are just okay. So in overall, the analog sticks are a little bit wiggly. So not the biggest fan of these little tiny analog sticks, but I think you're not going to use it because you're going to play retro games, or I assume you're going to play retro games with it. So that makes the X80 more like the Nintendo DS clone. So let's take a close look at the RetroGame. Alright, so let's talk about the RetroGame 350. It's a really nice portable system. And this is more like our traditional landscape model. I think the build quality is very sturdy. The analog stick, yeah, they are good quality, don't get me wrong, but these tiny analog sticks, you're not going to use them very often, maybe in some fighting games. So I'm a little bit, I think, I personally prefer that they put the D-pad over here and just leave the analog sticks at the bottom. There are some homebrew games you can use the analog stick, but they play just fine. So if you look at the quality of the buttons, very clicky, I like this, it feels very nice. I have very big hands, so if you want to play it for a long time, it's not going to be a problem. I personally love it. The system is a little bit bigger, so you have more comfort, but alright, so for this what you're going to get, it's not bad at all. But here comes the point that you're thinking, okay, but what model fits my need? That is something that is very important, and that's something that is very personal. Alright, so let's talk about the possibility if it comes to the software. So the X18 is running on Android. And Android, for the people who don't know, it's basically a very great program that you can add, like your phone, new files, new emulators. You can do whatever you want with it. But you have quite some freedom. But only, and here comes the catch, there's a lot of people I'm thinking don't know this, that the Play Store that we normally use for adding, let's say, emulators, you add when you play new games, it's not working on the X80 at the moment. So when making a video, it doesn't work at all, so you need to find new ways to add programs. So you need to have a little bit of knowledge how to do this. It is possible you can add new games, but for example, Call of Duty does work on this device. So if you just want to use it for, let's say, playing retro gaming, there are a lot of things of the X18 you're not going to use, and installing, let's say, the emulators and all the other files are needed is a little bit challenging, to be honest. Maybe in the future they were going to get preloaded with some programs, I don't know. But if they do, it would be a little bit easier to play retro games on the device. So for now, it's cool, you have a lot of freedom. You can play Android games, so this is more like an all-round device. But let's say configuring all the emulators and putting everything in the right position, that can be very challenging. So for the X18 retro gaming, it's possible, but it's not very easy. So that brings us to the retro game. So the retro game, it's based off OpenDingux. So OpenDingux is more like a version that you can add new programs, you can add homebrew games. That is something that is, let's say, it's not very new, but it is something that is just launched for a lot of these systems. So all the new Chinese versions come with this software. What I really like about this OpenDingux version, or better said, the RetroGame 350 itself, it comes pre-installed with a lot of emulators. So like compared with the X18, you don't need to add those emulators. There will be some emulators you're maybe missing out, you need to add them. And again, it's a little bit challenging to add them because you need to go to the website, you need to how to add these emulators. There will be a lot of tutorials on my page or other YouTuber pages. So that's not a big problem, but there are some things that you need to, let's say, consider. But overall, it's straightforward, very easy to install, it's very easy to use, and the emulation of this device is pretty good. This one doesn't have the option for, let's say, Android games like the X80, but we can play a lot of homebrew games. It depends a little bit of the community that's behind the OpenDingux, but in overall, there's a lot of great stuff to download for free. So I think even if you want to use, let's say, only homebrew games, I think the RetroGame 350 can be a very awesome device. Alright, so if you want to play just retro gaming, in general the X18 is a very powerful device. So if you want to play retro games, it has a wide support. And if you manage, of course, to play the emulators, it even has a support for PSP. It's not very huge because the device is powerful, but not powerful enough to run every game. And maybe in the future you can play games like maybe Dreamcast, GameCube, who knows, we shall see. But again, with the Android, we having so many options that you're missing out with the OpenDingux devices. Right, so if you take a close look at the retro emulation, it's very good on the RetroGame 350. But what are the limitations if you compare it with the X80? That is pretty simple, to be honest. PSP, Dreamcast, GameCube and all the stuff is a no-go. So if you want to have, let's say, next generation, but if you just want to play the 90s games, 80 games, the RetroGame is a pretty fine system. But if you want to have Dreamcast, GameCube, PSP and all those high-end systems, that will be a no-go. They're working on N64, for example, but it runs very choppy, or most of the time it runs pretty horrible. But it is more like a combination of software and the limitations of the hardware of the RetroGame or these Chinese portable systems. So again, if you just want to play old school 90s games, I think this is something you will enjoy. So I just want to do this quick side-by-side comparison of the screens. Both are beautiful, but as you can see, the screen, the 3.5 inch, is very tiny compared with the huge one of the X18. Alright, so if you're looking at retro gaming and emulation, both systems are just fine. Then you need to consider which one will fit your need, because the X80 and the RetroGame are two totally different builds if it comes to what kind of hardware you're going to get. I think it's more convenient if you want to play retro games. It's more straightforward with the RetroGame 350. But if you have some knowledge or you want to experiment with it, the X80 can be a better fit. So there are little things that you need to consider for yourself. And the X80 is more powerful and has a little bit more options. So if it comes, for example, Nintendo 64, PSP, some of the games are going to be playable, but not perfect. So keep that in mind. Alright, so that brings us to the final conclusion. I am not going to tell you which portable system will fit your needs. That's something you need to decide for yourself. I just wanted to do this quick overview and show you the differences between the two systems. There are two totally different systems running on totally different firmwares or software. The RetroGame of the OpenDingux and the X80 on Android. Both have the positive and the negative sides, and I think it's more the question, what do you want to do with it? That is the question you need to ask yourself. I hope this information helped you out. Don't forget to join the Wicked family, subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell. And if you like retro gaming or gaming in general, don't forget to check out the Wicked Gaming channel because we have a lot of stuff going on there. See you next time and bye bye.